Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Alan Hollander, the CEO and founder of ePractice Manager. We are a practice management and practice consulting and coaching firm. And I want to talk to you today about leadership. You know, when we ask doctors to rate themselves on their leadership skills on a scale of, let us say, 1 to 10, 10's the highest, 1's the lowest, we usually get responses between 5 and 7. Yeah, it's interesting. And when we dig down on why practice owners, doctors, give themselves those types of mediocre ratings, their responses most commonly have to do with something like they don't want to deal with the confrontation that a manager may have to do. And more importantly, they also say that they don't want to have to oversee and take care of staff, scheduling, or other administrative functions of that nature. Because of this, problems, particularly when it comes to things to staff matters, are often overlooked or they're dismissed until they hit a critical point, at which time it's usually more complicated or harder to deal with. Now, all of this could be avoided and handled very smoothly in most cases if some simple leadership and executive skills were being used. So this brings me to point number 1. I'm going to go over 3 essential points or elements in leadership that we have seen are just vital to good, strong leadership. Now, number 1 has to do with accountability. I hate to use a cliche that is so overused, but I'm going to because it's very descriptive. The buck really does stop with the owner, with leadership. Leadership requires, therefore, an alertness for errors and problems when they occur. You know, a client recently told me about a well-known military figure. We were talking about leadership. And he said, the quote was something like, "Never let an error go by." You know, it's a great point. If you as a leader, whether you're a business owner or some other supervisor, or you are just observing errors, that likely means that others have missed it. They didn't catch it, or they're ignoring it. But if the owner, let's say, doesn't point it out when he or she sees it, so it gets addressed, then this leadership in action is actually condoning the issue. It's setting a very poor example for others, and leadership is weakened. You know, charisma and personality, the things they talk about when you think of great leaders, they can be a factor. But the simple act of doing something when one should is much more important. Acting when you should act demonstrates to staff that you, as the employer, as the leader, as a supervisor, as an office manager, you don't let things go by. Now, let's differentiate here. I'm not talking about micromanaging, okay? I'm not saying that you as a leader are constantly looking for things that are wrong. I'm saying when things come up, if you're observing them, it means they haven't been addressed by others and you must take action. Here's one of many examples, something that we see all the time. Let's say there are problems in an office with scheduling. You know, this is not uncommon. Despite templates that can work in most cases, they're not being followed. So as a result, the back office routines are thrown off schedule, people become annoyed, and you have friction. You've probably seen this. Now, when it first occurred, assuming a front office person, a lead up front, if there is one, or the clinical lead, the person in the back, if there is one, or the office manager, saw this and addressed it appropriately, it would have been taken care of. But that's not what happened. Let's assume it wasn't fixed by any of those individuals, and now the owner doctor is hearing complaints about it, or they're simply observing it for themselves. If that individual doesn't take steps that make others accountable, it actually, in this case, it would be the office manager, then we have a leadership breakdown. Continuous errors of this kind, if they just go on, lead to staff that feel they're not being supported and they don't have the leadership and direction they need. My point is very simple here. Lack of appropriate action when it should happen always leads to additional work, complications, and increased difficulty in dealing with problems. You know, we also see this, I mean, it's a life lesson as well. I'm sure you know this. Okay, let's look at another essential leadership action. This is the second one I want to cover today quickly. Setting clear objectives and goals for your group. It answers the question of where or in what direction are you taking the practice. I almost don't like to use this term because, again, it is used so frequently, but your mission or your vision for where you see the practice going needs to be stated, and people need to know it. It will only happen, by the way, with the support of a team. Teams are stronger and get more done than individuals. If your objectives, and as an owner, it's your practice, so your objectives are most important here. If these are not understood and embraced by your team members, it's going to be a longer and it's going to be a much more arduous journey. If part of your mission, for example, let's just look at an example here, is to have patients treated as though they're family, and this is clearly known. Your staff know this, they've read it, they know that you talk about this. Then staff have a standard to which they can be held that will get all of you to the overall goals more quickly and easily. Or if part of the vision, we're talking big picture here, is to serve patients in the community with the highest quality service and care they can receive, then you have another element in your expectations that individuals can follow. Maybe you find this oversimplistic, but you know, read the reviews of Business After Business, where there are just horror stories of poor service, inattentiveness, and just plain ripoff. We contact practices constantly around the country. It's something that we do. We do shopper calls for our clients as part of an initial analysis of their practice. And wow, there's just, it's eye-opening. Maybe people are just distracted sometimes. But again, these standards have to be laid out and they have to be very, very clear. Not all people, this is why, not all people have the same objectives or standards. It has to do with an individual's decisions about how they're going to live their lives. How are they going to conduct themselves in the workplace as well? Without real clarity as to what you expect and where you want things to go, you end up in a group where each member is simply following their own vision, their own standards, and their own goals. I'm not making less of these. I'm simply pointing out that if staff don't have or see a clear pathway and objective to follow, then they are naturally going to follow one that they're comfortable with. And that may not be yours. Hopefully, when new people are interviewed, such things are really in black and white. I mean that literally. They're written down and new people coming in can read them. And your hiring process includes a careful evaluation of the candidate's understanding and ability to buy in and operate within the structure and guidelines that you've defined. Very important screening tool. Without this, you don't really have a group. You have a collection of individuals. Yeah, many of whom, by the way, may be extremely competent, but you don't have a mutually shared purpose and direction. And this is a perfect segue to this next essential number 3, policies and procedures, which we often find in practices, is either unclear, out of date, or just missing. And in such cases, it makes leadership very, very difficult. Here's why. What are the policies and procedures that work? Let's just talk about these for a moment. One, what are the ones that work? This is very important because your policies have to show that they're proven effective over time. That's how they become policies. Two, they have to be written clearly, and they have to be followed. They have to be able to be followed. If they're not written clearly or clearly understood, then they can't be followed. And then three, they have to be followed. Number four would naturally be, if they aren't followed, there's some type of correction or enforcement and helping people understand policies so they can comply with them. Without this, your policies and procedures become subjective. If they're not written, people will make up their own. It's the same as with objectives and goals. Individuals will then follow the policies and procedures that they've grown up with, that they've employed and used in other practices where they worked, or they feel they have a, quote, better way to carry things out. Policy, when it's written down and used appropriately, is the actual fabric of your practice and its operating guidelines. But it's the responsibility of the leadership of the group to ensure that these policies exist, that they're known and used. To the degree that you don't have these, you are going to have disorganization. You're going to have people bumping into each other. This actually breeds conflict in a practice, since these are the common agreements that all those in the group are supposed to accept and use. So, why is this so important to a leader? How do you use these policies if you are a manager or a supervisor or an owner? You do this by, one, ensuring that everyone in the practice has read them and they really grasp them. This is not just an exercise, something you can check off a list. Do they have questions about the use and implementation of these, and have they been answered? Have they shown through question and answers that, and by their actions, that they know the policies? Yes, test people. Ask questions of how they would address patients or situations or other staff in the practice using the policies and procedures they have. That's number one. Two, when you see mistakes or breaches or ignoring of policy or procedures, you fix them by using the policies and procedures. You have the individual read the policy that gives the correct procedure or guideline. They should submit something that explains how they're now going to use this policy. You can just say, hey, send me an email at the end of the day after you've read this over and let me know how you can use this. Always have the employee look over the policy or the procedure that was violated. This is extremely important. When those who manage stick to this procedure, it reinforces the policy. It's not something that just gets sort of like read when they come on and sort of sits in a drawer somewhere and the pages get yellow. It makes leadership much, much simpler. Policy has to be kept alive and used. Here's an example. Staff to owner, doctor, let's say it's a doctor. He or she, right in the middle, walking in between procedures. Staff member, well-meaning, walks up to the doctor and says, hey, gosh, excuse me, I have to leave early on Thursday. Thursday's tomorrow. I have to leave early on Thursday to get an appointment, to go to an appointment. Is this okay with you? Here's the only response from the doctor to that staff member. Hey, gotcha. We have a procedure for handling that. It's right in our in your office policies. It's going to show you exactly how you can figure out how to do that. Hey, thank you. I got to take care of this patient. That's the end of the conversation. Here, another example. Front office scheduler to office manager. Excuse me, office manager, patient just called and they told me that they can only come in the late afternoon for their procedure, and they really would like us to get them in. Well, what's the response? Office manager either accepts the problem or says to the scheduler, I see. Go take a look at your scheduling job description on how you handle this type of situation. It's laid out. I think we've even got some sample scripts on it. Go ahead, read that over. Perfect. Okay, good. Let me know how you took care of that when you're done. Okay, thanks. Yeah, very simple, I know. But when managers and owners are presented with problems by their staff, they have to impress upon them that these are addressed by using the office policies and procedures, and that the staff will find the answers to just about all the issues within their policies. Where leaders are constantly presented with situations or problems, and they feel that they have to figure out how to deal with these, they get worn down and stressed out. Good leadership instills in staff that they have the ability to handle these situations and problems by using the policies and procedures that you've given them. You have empowered them with problem-solving skills. Another way to view this is look at your policies and procedures as the decisions that they're asking you to make that are already made, and they're in the policy. The answers are all there. The owners in a practice do not have to spend, by the way, hours and days and weeks or even longer writing policies. There are many, many templates for this that can be edited and individualized for your practice. At the end of this, on a slide forward, I'll give you some contact information for us. We have all kinds of samples. We're delighted to talk with you about how to do this. But it's the job of the office manager to oversee this project, and staff can, and they should, participate in developing job descriptions and procedures for their positions. It's a group effort, and if it's done properly, it can be done very, 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 very quickly. So those are these three items. I hope these resonate with you. They're things that we have seen over and over again in dealing with thousands of practices. One, owner, as the leader, you have to demonstrate that there is accountability in your practice. And individuals have to know that if there's something that they didn't handle, that it's their job to do it, and they need to do it. And action needs to be taken. If it goes by you and it's ignored, then the group employees view leadership as ineffective. They may love you to death. We've heard this so many times. You know, I really love working here. I love the doctor, but they recognize this. So you can change this perception if it's there. Define purposes and objectives. Your goals and your purposes have to be known, and you must use office policies and procedures to address things in the practice. These things alone can have a tremendous, dramatic change on a practice and its productivity. So thank you very much. I'm Alan Hollander from ePractice Manager. Here's my contact information and contact information for our company. If you have questions about these things, call us, email me, call me, myself or somebody from our company will get back to you. We'll be delighted to have a free consultation with you, give you suggestions and advice, and even some sample policies that you can use to address any type of situation in your practice. All right, hope you found this useful. Thanks very much.